It took about two-thirds of Leave Yesterday Behind for me to start liking this film. And maybe that's not a popular opinion because this has 7 out of 10 on IMDb, which is a really strong rating. Although it is worth pointing out that that's across only 163 reviews, so it's not exactly the most popular film. This was brought to my attention by a YouTuber. They pointed out that this was on YouTube, and I decided to give it a watch because I am in love with Carrie Fisher, and I will watch anything she does. And to be honest, I didn't enjoy most of the film, and even when it picked up, I kind of thought it's not terrible anymore, but I'm still not enjoying it. This was released in 1978. It was an ABC film directed by Richard Michaels, written by Paul Harrison. Carrie Fisher plays a character called Marnie, and she stars alongside John Ritter, who plays a character called Paul. And Paul is a 21-year-old who has a severe accident during a polo match, and he becomes paralyzed from the waist down. And he goes to his grandfather's farm, where he feels like it's a good place to. His grandfather's ranch, where he feels it's obviously a good place to get away from everything, to recuperate and to get his thoughts together. And while there, he meets Marnie, who is a local horse trainer, and it's partly about this friendship that sparks between them and Marnie's treatment of Paul. She definitely doesn't treat him like a cripple, if you will, whereas there are people around him who keep referring to him as the wheelchair, not to his face. And there are some really horrible attitudes in this about him and about his condition, and Marnie provides great strength against that and tells them straight that their attitudes are horrific. And it does provide, obviously, a sentimental look at Paul's own journey, coming to terms with things, and sometimes he's quite mellow. Maybe mellow is not the right word, but kind of calm and reflective. You can see he's calmly sitting, thinking about things, and sometimes he will kind of lash out in anger and frustration. And I think it gives what I would imagine to be a pretty accurate representation of the roller coaster of emotions that one might feel like or one might experience if they go through something like this. Thankfully, I'm blessed that I've obviously never gone through anything like this. But if there's something that's going to completely stop your life in its tracks, it's going to cause you a lot of emotional turmoil and confusion. And this is what we see in Paul, and I think it's a great character study. But the actual narrative, the events that happen, are so not very interesting, to be blunt. His relationship with Marnie I kind of like. There's a scene at the pool that I thought was pretty good, and that's kind of the turning point for me. Once they went swimming, after that I thought, okay, slightly different change of pace, feels a little bit different. It's kind of good. Maybe good's too strong a word, but it was okay. But there was a scene in the rain that went on forever, and you'll know which scene it is. And it just seemed to drag on and didn't get anywhere. And the pacing for the first two-thirds of the film, I just think, is appalling. And then once it picked up, I thought, yeah, it's fair, it's decent enough. So I think it's an important topic, and Paul as a character gives a really interesting representation of what an individual might feel like. And obviously, me viewing it from an outsider's perspective, it's quite eye-opening. It makes me think about things. Marnie as a character is a very refreshing take on more positive outlooks and attitudes she has towards somebody who is in a wheelchair. And then, of course, we have the characters who are less than polite about things and who basically kind of look down on him because he's in a wheelchair, even though he does some fantastic things and is very talented. He was training to be a vet. He's very creative with his hands. The film gets to highlight all of his strengths and greatnesses. It wasn't just polo that he was good at. And I think that's fantastic that it does that while showing these horrible attitudes, because it really strengthens just how bizarre it is to have those opinions when clearly, even though he's in a wheelchair, he's still a human, and he's also still got all of these amazing talents and capabilities. So what are you doing? So it is important, and the messages in this are very good. The acting, John Ritter and Carrie Fisher in particular, top notch. Really thoroughly enjoyed it. I realise I'm a bit biased, but yeah, it wasn't what I would call a good film. The final third was maybe good, It was okay. Some scenes were good. The scene at the pool was good. The scene at the horse show I thought was quite engaging as well. And a scene shortly after that, where Marnie kind of flips her lid a bit, I really liked. But for the most part, it just wasn't very good. I'd say it's worth a watch because the message is important, but only if you're in the mood for one of those films that don't require much concentration. Blink and you won't really miss anything. You can catch up really quickly, no matter what point of the film you start in. But of course, probably worth watching it from the beginning. It's not great. It's not the world's worst film ever. I don't regret watching it, but I won't watch it again.